Namaste and welcome to another episode in our series, What's in a Word? Here we'll be delving into the origins and background of certain everyday English words that we use when talking about or explaining Hindu Dharmas. I'm Samir Kalra, your host and one of the managing directors at HAF. And I'm joined as usual by my colleague and HAF's Director of Education, Dr. Vijay Satnarine. Welcome, Vijay. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Samir.
Great. So today, Vijay, we're going to be talking about the word religion. When I search for the definition of religion, the dictionaries are quite explicit. The Merriam-Webster definition states a personal set or institutionalized system of religion, attitudes, beliefs, and practices, the service and worship of God or the supernatural, and commitment or devotion to religious faith or observance. Vijay, can you tell us where the word religion originates from?
This is such a complex topic, and I really wish that if people have the time, you read a book called The Invention of World Religions by Tomoko Masuzawa. But let's try and deal with it in a nutshell here. So the word religion has a couple possible origins in Latin. In one, it means reading repetitively, but its more popular meaning comes from the sense of religare, which is to bind, referring to the oath between Yahweh and his followers. When it entered English, it accrued additional senses, specifically action or conduct reflecting one's oath with God. Before the age of the Enlightenment in the 1800s, anyone without a religion or with a religion other than the Semitic ones were seen as following a false or wrong religion. At the same time, European empires were categorizing our peoples as they were taking over, and they saw our worldviews, carved out a few as separate quote-unquote world religions, and left the remainder as broad heathenisms. And if it had its origin in India, then it would be known as Hinduism, with double O, the heathen religion of Indian peoples. Those presumptions are that, one, Hindus have always thought of themselves as having a religion, and that, two, that all of the traditions of India are multiple heathen branches of one originally satanic and false religion. Although those attitudes may have changed over time, sadly, they're still taught today using different language. And in some cases, they're even regurgitated by our own people because of the educations that we've all gone through. So it is definitely appropriate and apt to call the Abrahamic traditions religions, but when it comes to Hindus, not so much.
Great. And I would just add one caveat in that I think when we're talking about protections under the law, even if we don't want to refer to ourselves as a religion in the same way when we're comparing ourselves to other traditions, I think we would still be able to take advantage of protections under the law because whatever word we use, which Vijay will get into in a minute, will still help define us in a way that we would be protected under the law. And so with that, Vijay, can you tell us what a better word would be to use instead of religion?
Exactly. And I want us to really understand that we do live in a Judeo-Christian world as much as we are a cosmopolitan society, insofar as all of our legal protections and federal policies, even state policies, are based on this understanding that was developed in the 1800s. So we are people who are dharmic. We can deal with two sometimes opposing streams of thought operating in our minds at the same time. So as Samir says, yeah, definitely, we need to understand how there are protections for religions, and we do need to hold on to a religion identity. But I want to speak to us as a people also who are spiritual seekers and help us understand the difference between what our ancestors wanted from us and advise us to do versus what the law requires us to do in other cases. So speaking of our ancestors, our ancient history, we came from over 4,400 different tribes and people groups, and all of them had their own spiritual traditions from antiquity. In the age of the Mahajanapadas, confederated tribes formed nations for trade and security purposes, especially after Alexander Macedon, also known as Alexander the Great, invaded in around 326 BCE. They also found a way, whilst discussing trade and security, to also discuss how they practiced different things, how they believed in different stories, etc., etc. These discussions on organic growth and evolution led to some regional and tribal traditions, um, that is to say, the traditions that they had from their ancestry, the spiritual traditions, they chose to keep it located to their own peoples and their own areas. But others chose to form up and join with other tribes and other groupings in order to create cosmopolitan societies and expand. And so they synthesized what are now referred to as pan-regional traditions. Bear with me. These pan-regional traditions all focused on the purpose of spiritual practice, and they articulated it in the same way. And so this is crucial. They all sought a way to manage the ups and downs of life. They were seekers pursuing freedom or moksha. They were trying out practices and various methods and techniques that would enhance their ability to do so. Some traditions prescribed meditation on a supreme being. Other traditions did not teach of a supreme being. In that way, ancient Bharata, there were a variety of regional and tribal traditions, pan-regional monotheist and non-theist traditions. The difference is in the goal. The goal of these Dharma traditions cannot be said to simply be following the singular supposed law of God. Neither can it be said that all of these traditions have one singular origins. There are definitely commonalities, but there is no need for them to be falsely collapsed into one supposed singular religion. Our traditions are that of seekers, not believers. Our traditions are not religious. There are no minimum standards you have to conform to in order to be considered a Hindu. Of course, if a person wanted to have a guided spiritual journey, they would find a spiritual guide or guru and become part of a Hindu Dharma tradition and would pledge to follow the ethical principles and practice guidelines of that said sampradaya or Dharma tradition. But still, that's not the same as religion, because even if they left a specific sampradaya, they would always still be considered Hindu.
Got it. So in essence, what would be the terminology that we should be using instead of religion?
Right. And exactly what you said before, this is when we're thinking about ourselves as practicing or not practicing, or our heritage or whatever it happens to be. Our traditions, they used to use words like agama and dharma, or the regional words from different languages that have a similar sense. Neither of those words translate as religion. They both translate to the received teachings, practices, and guidance that allows one to manage life in a spiritual manner and support both those who want to find freedom from samsara, but also just those who want to navigate their lives a bit better. As such, a decent English approximation would be the word spiritual traditions. And ours, therefore, would be the Hindu Dharma traditions or the Hindu spiritual traditions. What they are, just in sum, these are the pan-regional monotheist Hindu Dharma traditions like Shakta, Shaiva, Vaishnava, Smarta, Kaumaram, and Sanatana Dharmas, etc. Pan-regional non-theist Hindu Dharma traditions like pre-modern Sankhya, Charvaka, etc. traditions, and regional or tribal traditions like the Sanamaha, Sarana Dharma, Kirat Mundhum, etc. In sum, when we talk about our own Dharma traditions to ourselves, we are talking about spiritual traditions. We do not follow or believe. We seek, we practice, we question, we trust reasonable and logical answers, and we improve. We can talk about religions when we discuss those who have used it to describe themselves for centuries, such as the Abrahamic traditions. And we can use religion for ourselves when we have to advocate in places that use religion as a meaningful legal term.
Yeah, and I think, Vijay, the reason I love the term spiritual traditions is because I think today people are very disillusioned with the traditional definition of religion in the Judeo-Christian context and don't want to be tied down to any one definition. So by using the term spiritual traditions, which accurately describes our way of life as Hindus, I think it is appealing to others who are looking for something that is more that allows more freedom in their thought and how they seek out their own spirituality. So I think not just from an accuracy perspective, I think it's wonderful in explaining ourselves to the larger American population. So thank you for that historical lesson as well as spiritual explanation.
Thank you.
Right? And with that, we're going to come to the conclusion of this episode. Want to thank everyone again for joining us in our series, What's in a Word? Namaste and thank you.
Namaste. Thank you all. And also thank you to my fellow shiny headed friend.
Thank you for having me.